how are you? Well, my name is Fernanda Ortiz, and before I start talking, I want you to take a minute to look around you and see how many of you are on your phone right now. It can be the person in front of you, the person next to you, it can even be you. So please raise your hand if you have a phone. Okay, raise your hand if you have internet. Okay, so I think all of us have a phone with internet access. And that's because nowadays we're living in a digital era which started around 80s, and that has led to many benefits. But also, it has led us humans to become slaves of the internet. Okay, so the problem is that big, that did you know that by the end of your life, you will have spent an average of 9 years on your phone? That's a lot. So just for you to be able to the dimension of the problem, I made a list of weird and unnecessary activities you can complete during all that time. Because the 9 years of your life you will spend on your phone is equivalent of you listening to all Maluma songs 6,570 times. It's also the equivalent of you watching One Piece on full, non-stop, 182.43 times. And also, with 9 years of your life, you can listen to Ganga Style song this much. It's a lot. I made this just for you to be able to dimension that we do spend plenty of time in our phones, even though sometimes we don't want to accept it, okay? So, every single person tells us that being in our phone that much is bad, and that we shouldn't do it that much, and that it's an addiction. But no one really tells us why. Why is it addictive? What happens inside our brain that makes it so addictive? How does it affect us? Because if we don't want to spend 9 years of our life on the phone, we have to do something about it. But for us to be able to do something about it, first we have to understand why is it addictive. So we have to talk about our ancestors. Okay, I didn't mean that ancestors. We know he lives since the Big Bang, but I'm talking about our ancestors, okay? So I'm gonna tell you a weird or a strange fact about our brain. And it is that it works very similar to the one our God ancestors had when it comes to certain stimulus. For example, in the past, our ancestors got excited when they saw something new or when they discovered something different. And that is the exact same thing that happens to our brain nowadays, but in a different way. Because, for example, nowadays we don't really get excited if we see something new, because everything in this modern world is almost fully discovered. But we do get excited when we receive a notification, for example. You know, I picture myself getting excited when I receive a notification from my friend or of someone leaving a like to my story. But why? Why do we get excited about that? Well, our brain releases something that's called dopamine, which is what I like to call like our reward system. Notifications are a reward. Entertaining, it's a reward. So when we receive a notification, our brain basically is producing lots and dopamine, and our brain loves that, okay? So after knowing all this, I think, most of us are related with these kind of videos. But why these videos are so addictive? Why we keep watching them, even though we don't really like them? Well, the reason why these videos are so addictive is because they are basically overstimulating our brain. But what is overstimulation? Well, overstimulation is a state of being that's caused by too much sensory input. In other words, it's basically our brain receiving lots and lots of information, which translates in our brain producing lots of dopamine. And our brain absolutely loves that, because dopamine is candy to our brain, okay? So after knowing all this, after understanding this, I wondered, and I started thinking, okay, but why it is so difficult for me as a student to concentrate in studying after being on my phone. And what would happen if we reduce that amount of stimulation? So I started investigating, and suddenly I found a video where there was this guy who said that the feeling we have when we go from a high stimulating activity to a lower stimulating activity, that feeling has a name, and it's called boredom. So when I listened to this, everything made so much more sense. That's why it is so difficult for us students to concentrate in studying after being on our phone, because our phones are constantly giving a reward to our brains. So when we have to pay attention in class, when we have to listen to the teacher, we can't, because we are so used to be so overstimulated that when we have to do an activity that does not produce that amount of stimulation, we feel that's kind of boring. But at the end, it's not really boredom. I mean, it's just our brain receiving a slower stimulus. So now that we understand why is it addictive, what can we do about it? You know, I'm not going to ask you to grab your phone and to throw it away and to go to live to the mountain to become the next avatar, because nowadays it's basically impossible to escape from technology. But what I would recommend you to do is just one simple thing. Just turn off your notifications. As simple as that. Start with this little habit for your brain to be able to experience how not being that overstimulated is, and for you to be able to reconnect a little bit more with the real world. Because due to all this, we are losing concentration. We are losing the ability of paying attention. And we can't really change the way technology is advancing right now. But we can do change the way we use it. So with this little habit, we'll be able to recover a little bit more from all this overstimulating process that we are experiencing due to all this digital era. So please, let's reclaim our focus, you know, one notification at a time. Thank you.